So there's this old book. It's called The Bible, and it's about this dude called Jesus who goes around doing magic like walking on water and turning wine into bread and fishes. A bit like old-timey Dynamo, but not as good because he doesn't do the trick where he hovers next to the London bus. Anyway, so Jesus does this one trick where he wanders out in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. It's not really magic, more like that time David Blaine sat in that ice cube or stood in that pillar, so like a publicity stunt. So anyway, Jesus is wandering out in the desert for a while and he does some stuff and he talks to a dog for a bit and then he comes back and everyone's like, wow! Like Jesus, thief has been wandering in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, and then another 3,509 days and nights. It's come back and everyone's like, wow, but what's the wow about and should you give a shit? In Thief, you're still a thief, and the idea is to stealth your way around picking locks and stuffing as much shit as possible down the front of your seemingly infinite trousers while remaining undetected, which is pretty much the same as before. However, to get an idea of where the old and the new diverge, it's important to understand the differences. The titular thief, Garrett, from the first 3 games has been replaced with the amazing Frog Lad, the only man with the power to have no neck and be unable to jump straight up. Seriously, there's no jump on command, he'd be shit on a skipping rope. However, Frog Lad has been given a skill to replace this, the skill of Swoop. Apart from Swoop, Frog Lad can do sorts of parkour around the city, so moving around the rooftops is done with relative ease, so while you can line up lengthy free-running sequences with Frog Lad leaping and bounding around like some kind of radioactive frog lad, you can be stopped in your tracks by waist-height guardrails which the game simply doesn't want to let you cross, or carts with a couple of boxes on them. So the story goes something like that Frog Lad has this band of annoying friends, namely Ugly Girl, Fat Guy, and this dude. He's got this bit which I'm pretty sure is supposed to be balding, but looks like it's ridged slightly, so maybe it's a skull cap. Okay, so apart from being your friend, Jewish Skullcap Man is also your enemy, which is either teaching us that we should never trust bald people or spreading a seriously anti-Semitic message. Basically, the only thing to know about the story is that it's so shit it's barely worth mentioning, and the cutscenes seem ridiculously tacked together and basically serve no purpose except to wear out your spacebar as you frantically try and avoid getting pulled into another round of apathetic voice acting and having to look at Frog Lad's lack of a chin. Once you've mercifully skipped the cutscenes, you're relatively free to roam around the city, a vast, sprawling open-world sandbox filled with living, breathing inhabitants and teeming with side plots, intrigues and mystery. Sorry, did I say sprawling open world? I meant small and closed into restrictive zones accessed through prescribed doorways and windows, and while the city might be filled with inhabitants, it's not very full. There are 2 kinds of residents in the city, the homeless and guards. This can be inferred from there being nobody in any of the houses except for the occasional guard, who we have to assume are guarding their own houses because everybody else lives out in the street, which is a shame because despite not being enormous, the city is pretty well designed, very pretty and has lots of nooks and crannies to explore. It's like someone got contracted in to pour their heart and soul into designing the city, then their contract ended, and whichever middle manager was left in charge just went right, fill it up with guards and hobos, then left to get some lunchtime beers and a few lines of coke down his neck, because apparently game design studios are indistinguishable from 90s investment banks. Speaking of the guards, while 10 years of continued development in the industry has seen pretty much across-the-board improvements apart from Frog Lad's stupid face, one thing that remains consistent across the Thief series is the lack of intelligence in the individuals supposed to be guarding the city, which remains roughly equivalent to concrete. Guards will shout, scream, pursue you, and then completely forget about you once you round a corner or walk into a patch of shadow, declaring that it was probably a trick of the light or just a rat or some other completely ridiculous reason, which is clearly not the right one since they've just been chasing a giant black-clad frog through the streets.
Fucking beggars. Makes you miss the old watch.
Guards also swear now. They swear! Eidos are clearly trying to take the series in a more adult way, what with the swearing and the bared breasts on screen, which I won't show here but have clearly been created by someone with only the vaguest idea of how boobs behave, and were clearly crafted based on pictures from a jazz mag. But guard swearing is not on for one simple reason. They did away with calling you a taffer. That was about my favourite part of the old Thief games, being spotted and having some guard shout, "Come here, taffer," as they thunder past the tiny patch of shadow you're crouching in and start impacting off and clipping into nearby walls. I even got into using it in real life, trying to win pub fights by declaring, "Who art thou calling a homo, thy taffer?" Though I'm pretty certain that was probably most of the reason people thought I was gay at the time. So basically, what have we got? Let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. Graphics. The graphics are good. They're very good. The city is lavish, well constructed, and looks like somebody put some love into its creation. If you've got a decent machine, you can crank it all the way up to max, then leave max alone at the pub and go play Thief on the highest graphics settings. Also, you're laughing at max. Why? Because max has an Xbox and it looks shit. The parkour system is pretty good fun once you get the hang of the fact that you can't jump and you avoid railings like the plague. Chaining together a string of moves feels funky, like a 70s disco champ who's dressed all in black and has a frog face. The options are good. Now, I'm not one for making my life more difficult, but I get that some people like the way things were in the old Thief, or they don't want various HUD elements, they like permadeath for some reason, and that sort of thing. So while I haven't used any of these, I can only commend IDOS for basically giving everyone exactly what they want by letting you turn off pretty much every single quality of life function in the game. I'm lazy and need to be led by the hand, but at least for people who strive for perfection in video games, and therefore presumably in every other aspect of their life, like getting the trolleys straight in the Sainsbury's car park where they work, the option is there. The bad. The first bad thing is the stupid thing where you go through a gap and you need to move the same stupid beam out of the way. It's in the game like 50 times with the same setup and the same beam, and you just need to punch E a few times to move it. And I don't know why it annoys me so much, but it does. It just feels lazy. On that same note, having to hit E a load of times to open windows is irritating. It's just unnecessary key pressing and doesn't add anything. The lack of life in the city is annoying. It's annoying more because inhabitants being left out seems lazy rather than by design. Yes, it's all at night, so you wouldn't expect to have loads of people in the street, but there should be people in houses having dinner or whatever, and should be able to call guards if they detect you stuffing their valuables into your drawers. As it is, the houses just tend to be areas of free loot hidden one lockpick away. Rope arrows are my final big gripe. They used to be able to go into any wooden beam, which opened up the three-dimensional nature of Thief and showed its design as a free-form game which you could use multiple routes to solve. Now there are certain beams which are clearly marked, and shooting rope arrows into anything else is completely pointless. These seem intended to do nothing more than make decisions linear. The ugly. Frog Lad is ugly. He really is. Look at that stupid face. If it wasn't inside a screen I paid for, I'd punch him myself. The story is also ugly. It doesn't impact on how you enjoy the game or how well it actually plays, but it's an unnecessary addition which just serves to distract from the gameplay itself and basically adds nothing apart from a stick to vaguely prod the set pieces of the game forwards. Finally, focus is ugly. It's a bar which counts down and changes your view to show things which you can interact with, as well as, once upgraded, doing other stuff like giving you bullet time. While it's useful in seeing things which you need to interact with, it just comes across as a crutch which is only needed because the design of the game is so obtuse sometimes, doing things like hiding switches on the backs of beams which you're not going to see unless you walk somewhere you've no reason to go, or disguising them as bits of wall. It feels like if the game had been designed a bit more fluidly to set you on the right path and let you achieve your own route, this just wouldn't be necessary. In all, it's a bit of an up and down. The overall feel of the game is good, and it's nice to be back behind the eyes of a master thief, even if he is Frog Lad instead of Garrett. At the end of the day, while there are some problems with the game, they're annoyances rather than anything really bad, and they can be ignored with just a little bit of patience and a pre-recorded loop of "Get back here, you Taffer!" going off in the background.